It still blows my mind how fast a peaceful street can turn into a stage. 1 minute, my block in Maple Grove, Virginia is exactly what you'd expect on a quiet Saturday. Sprinklers ticking in front yards, kids wobbling down the sidewalk on bikes, somebody's old rock playlist drifting from an open garage, and I'm just a man in a t-shirt and sweats walking out of my little brick house with a bag of trash in my hand, thinking more about coffee than conflict. My name is Jordan Miles. I'm a black man. I own that single-story place at the end of the cul-de-sac in Oak Ridge Estates. And that morning I stepped out onto my driveway expecting boredom, not battle. I took maybe 3 steps before I saw them. At the edge of my property line stood 3 figures, 2 men in all-black tactical-style vests, and between them, like she was their commander, Claudia Mercer, president of the Oak Ridge Estates HOA. The vests had big stitched patches that read community enforcement, like some cheap spin-off of real police gear, straps hanging loose, boots scuffed. The kind of costume you buy online when you want to feel important but don't want to put in the work. I set the trash bag down slowly, rested my hands on my hips, and just looked at them for a second, letting my training kick in. I've spent most of my life reading people, watching posture, eyes, hands, and I could tell before anybody spoke that this whole thing was a bad imitation of authority. "Mr. Miles, we need to talk," Claudia called out, voice sharp enough to scratch glass. I didn't move. "About what?" I asked, keeping my tone level, more curious than threatened. The taller guy stepped forward, pale, shaved head, mirrored sunglasses trying way too hard. He tapped the patch on his vest like it meant something. "Community enforcement," he said, flat and stiff. "You're in violation of neighborhood regulations. We're here to detain you until police arrive." That word hung in the air like smoke. Detain. Detain me. I repeated, almost laughing, on my own driveway. Claudia folded her arms like a disappointed principal. "You've ignored repeated notices. Jordan, this has gone too far. We can't have someone undermining our community rules. These men are here to make sure you comply." My gaze moved from her to the 2 men, then back again. "And what exactly are the charges?" I asked. The shorter one, stocky with a scruffy beard, dug a folded sheet from his vest, reading it like he was auditioning. "Property violations, non-compliance with HOA directives, unauthorized changes to your driveway, loud gatherings." He glanced up, "and more." "So," I said slowly, "because you don't like my driveway and my cookouts, you think that gives you the right to walk onto my property and, what was it, detain me?" The tall one squared his shoulders, boots scraping on the concrete. "That's right. You can come peacefully," he said. "Or we can make this harder." For a second, everything seemed to go quiet, like the whole cul-de-sac was holding its breath. I could see curtains shift, phone cameras glinting in windows. This wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a performance with an audience. "There is no such thing as community enforcement," I said finally, my voice going low, edged. "You're not police. You have no legal authority on my property, and right now you're trespassing." Color flooded Claudia's face. "Don't lecture me about authority. Jordan, we've had real complaints, and I'm not about to let this neighborhood fall apart because of you." She took a breath, her mouth twisting. "People like you," she started, then stopped herself, lips snapping shut. But the words were already out there, hanging ugly between us. "You ever see someone lean on a little bit of power not to protect a community, but to control it, twist it, make it fit their own bias, their own fear, their own view of who does or doesn't belong?" That was the moment I felt the shift, the moment this stopped being about trash cans and lawn edges and turned into something deeper. I stepped a little closer, not aggressive, just steady. "People like me, huh?" I said softly. "You want to be real careful how you finish that sentence, Claudia." The bearded guy shuffled his feet, suddenly less sure. "Look, it doesn't need to get ugly," he muttered. "Just come with us. We'll wait for the officers. Clear it up. Maybe they go easy." "Officers," I echoed, flat. Funny word to throw around when the only uniforms I see belong in the discount section of a costume shop. Claudia snapped, desperate to keep control. "These men are authorized by the Oak Ridge Estates HOA to ensure compliance," she insisted. "We don't answer to you." I almost smiled. "Listen to yourself," I said. "You brought 2 grown men in knockoff tactical vests to enforce paint colors and driveway widths. That's not law. That's theater, and the real police are going to be very interested in today's show. The crowd around us kept growing, little clusters of neighbors drifting out onto porches, down onto the sidewalk, phones held high, eyes wide, some nervous, some hungry for drama, all of them witnesses whether they liked it or not. The tall guy stepped in closer until he was right in my space. "If you resist, we escalate," he said, trying to sound like every tough guy he'd ever seen on TV. "Don't test me. I've sat across from cartel enforcers who were less reckless than you," I said quietly, calm enough that he had to lean in to hear. "You're standing on my property. No badge, no training, no authority, and no idea how deep in it you already are. You've got 30 seconds to step back and rethink this." Claudia heard the shift in my tone and panicked. "Why should the rest of us follow the rules while you do whatever you want?" she demanded, voice getting shrill. "We have a system, Jordan. We have standards. If you won't respect them, maybe you don't belong here." "Respect isn't something you enforce with fake cops and threats," I said, keeping my eyes on hers. "It's earned, and this isn't about standards. It's about control." That line carried down the block like a gavel hitting wood. I saw heads nod, people shifting, the spell of fear she'd held over them for years starting to crack. The bearded man wiped sweat from his forehead, leaning toward his partner. "Maybe we wait in the street," he whispered. "This is getting sideways." But the tall one shook his head, jaw clenched, pride winning. "We're not leaving," he hissed. "We finish this." From the sidewalk, a teen's voice cut through. "Yo, Mr. Miles, I got you on live right now," he called, phone raised high. That was Jaden Brooks from a few doors down. "There's like thousands watching." The tall man snapped his head toward Jaden. "Put the phone down," he barked, taking a step toward the kid. "Wrong move." I shifted without thinking, sliding between them, my body blocking his line, my voice dropping into that cold, precise register I usually save for interrogation rooms. "You even think about putting your hands on that kid. This ends a whole different way." He froze, one foot half planted, that tiny sliver of doubt finally breaking through. "This is a neighborhood matter," Claudia shouted, her voice climbing higher. "None of you should be interfering." A woman with a baby on her hip called from her porch. "Neighborhood matter? Looks like harassment to me." Another voice chimed in. "Where do you even find these guys, Claudia? You can't arrest your neighbor for a driveway. Do you hear them?" I asked her, not raising my voice, just letting it carry. "This isn't order. This is chaos, and you started it." She snapped back, the mask slipping. "You and your kind have always been the problem," she spat, bending the rules, ignoring what we built here. "My kind," I repeated, my head tilting just a little, every nerve in me going still, not because I didn't know what she meant, but because now everyone else did too. "The problem isn't my kind, Claudia. The problem is you don't know the difference between leadership and a power trip." The murmurs swelled into a low hum of anger. The bearded man finally folded. "We need to go," he whispered, both hands half raised. "This is insane." The tall one dug in, last threads of ego holding him up. He reached into his vest and pulled out a pair of cheap metal cuffs, snapping them together with a little clink he clearly thought would scare me. "Last chance," he said. "You're under neighborhood arrest." The phrase was so ridiculous you could feel the shock roll through the crowd, half outrage, half disbelief. I didn't move. "If you try to put those on me, that's a felony," I told him quietly, each word sharp. "Impersonating an officer, unlawful restraint, add trespassing and attempted assault, and we're talking real prison time, not HOA fines." His hand shook, just enough to show. The bearded guy's voice cracked. "Trent, this is insane. We're gonna get locked up," he moot. Read, saying his partner's name without thinking. "I didn't sign up for this." "Do it," Claudia snapped, eyes wild now. "Show him who's in charge." That was the moment pride beat out fear, the moment he lunged. "I've been doing this job a long time. I've trained longer than these guys have probably been pretending to be tough." He came in hard and clumsy, and before the crowd even processed the movement, I'd shifted my weight, twisted his wrist, spun him past me, and snapped his own cuffs on him in one fluid motion. He ended up bent over my driveway, breathing hard, wrists locked behind his back, the same metal he'd tried to use as a prop now biting into his skin. The street erupted, shouts, laughter, curses, someone yelled. He flipped it on him. Jaden was practically screaming into his phone. "Did y'all see that?" I stood over the man, Trent Lawson, as I'd just learned. Steady, not winded, my voice cutting through the noise. "You're done," I said. "Don't fight it, or you'll add resisting to the list." "You can't arrest him," Claudia shrieked, panic finally drowning the smugness. "You have no right." "You're correct about one thing," I told her, my tone turning to ice. "I'm not arresting him. I'm detaining him until actual law enforcement arrives." The bearded man, Rick Gomez, staggered backward. Hands up, vest suddenly too heavy on his shoulders. "I'm out. I'm done," he blurted, voice cracking. "You didn't tell us he was law enforcement." I looked at him, then at Claudia. "That's because she didn't know," I said. "None of you did, because you never bothered to check who you were trying to intimidate." I reached into my back pocket, pulled out a worn leather wallet, and flipped it open in one smooth motion so everyone, from the fake officers to the kids on the sidewalk, could see the gold catching the sunlight. "My name is Special Agent Jordan Miles," I said, my voice no longer just a homeowner's, but the voice I use in briefing rooms and on operations, Federal Bureau of Investigation. You could feel the shift, like somebody hit mute on the entire block. Gasps, a few whispered, "Oh my God, and then that deep, heavy silence where everyone realizes the game they thought they were watching isn't the game that's being played. The wail of sirens rolled down Oak Ridge Estates like thunder, blue and red lights washing over vinyl siding and manicured lawns. A patrol car pulled up in front of my house. Then a second behind it, doors opened, and two uniformed officers stepped out, hands resting near their holsters, eyes flicking from me, to Trent in cuffs, to Rick half out of his vest, to the crowd with their phones aloft. I adjusted my grip on Trent's wrists, kept my other hand visible, and unfolded my badge again, letting it gleam under the flashing lights. "Officers," I called, steady, projecting my voice just enough. "Special Agent Jordan Miles, FBI." The street went quiet all over again. The officers froze for a heartbeat, taking it in, then exchanged a quick look and approached with a new kind of focus. I laid it out plain. No drama, no fluff. This man attempted to impersonate law enforcement on my property, tried to place me under a fake arrest, and then lunged at me with the intent to restrain me. I said. His accomplice assisted. The HOA president over there orchestrated the whole thing. You've got a dozen cameras with the entire encounter, and I'll be filing a full report with my office. They listened, eyes drifting to the neighbors filming, to Jaden still streaming, to Rick now completely peeled out of his vest, holding it like a dead snake. One officer, Officer Daniels, gave a small nod. "We'll take it from here, Agent," he said, voice respectful. And within moments Trent was on his feet with official cuffs replacing the cheap ones, being guided toward the cruiser. Rick lifted his hands higher. "I'll cooperate, I'll talk," he stammered. "I swear I didn't know he was FBI." "Not knowing I'm federal doesn't make this legal," I said. "You still walked onto my land in a vest that said community enforcement and tried to restrain a homeowner. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a choice." Then all eyes turned to Claudia. She tried to shrink, but there was nowhere to go. The lead officer, Officer Ruiz, stepped toward her, pad in hand. "Ma'am, did you authorize these men to act in a law enforcement capacity?" he asked. She stammered, the confidence gone. I was only trying to keep order. The HOA has to maintain standards. I didn't know it was like this." "You staged a fake arrest to scare your own neighbor," I said quietly, but loud enough for the whole street. "You weaponized the HOA to target someone you didn't like. You brought in imposters to force compliance." Voices rose behind her, years of fear and resentment spilling out. "We all saw it, Claudia," someone shouted. "You've been bullying people for years," another neighbor called. "You can't hide behind President now." "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president of Oak Ridge Estates," she snapped, clinging to that title like it was armor, her voice cracking on the last word. "That title doesn't put you above the law," Officer Ruiz replied, firm. "Turn around, ma'am." When the cuffs clicked around her wrists, there wasn't a cheer, just this long, tired exhale from the neighborhood, like a muscle finally unclenching after being tight for too long. People who used to flinch when she walked by now turned away, shaking their heads. Her reign on that little patch of suburbia ended under red and blue lights in front of the same houses she'd terrorized with letters and threats. After the statements, after the cruisers pulled away with Trent, Rick, and Claudia, the street slowly went back to something like normal. Kids pulled their bikes out again. Parents drifted back inside. And I walked up my driveway with the trash finally in my hand, dropped it in the bin, and let myself feel the weight of what almost happened. I've spent years dealing with dangerous people, people with real power, real guns, real networks. But that day, right there in Oak Ridge Estates, the thing that stuck with me wasn't just the fake vests or the cheap cuffs. It was how easily a little neighborhood authority turned into attempted kidnapping, how quickly keeping things nice became harassing the black guy at the end of the street, how close it came to going very, very wrong if there hadn't been cameras, witnesses, and a badge in my back pocket. The days after were quieter. I got knocks on my door, neighbors apologizing for not speaking up sooner, for letting her rule with fear, for assuming I was the problem, because that's how she framed me. The Oak Ridge Estates HOA called an emergency meeting, stripped Claudia of every title she ever clung to, and started talking about real oversight, real boundaries, real limits on power. As for me, I went back to my routines, taking my trash out, mowing my lawn, heading off to do my actual job, which ironically is protecting people from exactly this kind of abuse, just usually on a bigger stage. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't look at that HOA bulletin board differently every time I drove by. Because here's what I know now, and what I want anyone listening to this to really sit with. Power based on fear, on bullying, on bias, always cracks. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually, it breaks in the light, and the same crowd that once stayed quiet ends up watching when the cuffs go on the person who thought they were untouchable. So let me ask you, after everything you've seen in this story, where do you draw the line between keeping order and abusing authority? If you lived on my street that day, would you have spoken up or stayed behind the curtain? And when someone in power crosses that line, whether it's an HOA president or a real official, what does real justice look like to you?